Well, hey again. I hope all of your isolations are going pretty well out there. I'm still isolated out in the glorious woods, watching the Lake Huron slowly eat into my property. I'm definitely a genius as far as timing goes. Yeah, this is a great time to start vacation rental property right prior to a pandemic explosion. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm a winner. Who knows where it'll go. Anyway, I wanted to put together another video here to kind of talk to you guys about what I'm seeing happen in the real estate markets. This is my second Corona update. It's been a minute, and I thought it'd be worth checking in with you. I've been having some very interesting conversations regionally and statewide and actually internationally, but that doesn't relate too much to our local real estate markets here. It's principally an update for clients and other investors. Just some of the things that I've been hearing. Again, I'm going to preface this by saying that I don't have a crystal ball here, and I still don't have definite answers. I'm not an attorney. I'm just a real estate broker, but I am pretty active in a lot of different groups, forums, meeting with other people who are smarter than me, and I get the opportunity to hear what they have to say. And I thought I'd bring some of that in a nutshell to you guys, so you kind of have a vibe of what's going on. First and foremost, real estate is not dead. We have been deemed non-essential by our illustrious governor, which, whether you consider that right or wrong, is irrelevant. It is what it is. What that means specifically is that certain components of the real estate world, namely everything that's face-to-face, showings, inspections, things like that, are suspended, at least until April 13th of 2020. Whether or not that gets extended, it's hard to say. I have heard from several people who are a little more learned than me that consider that timeline ambitious, and the potential for that to extend is there. But even that being said, deals are still happening. Title companies have been deemed essential as part of the financial services industry, so property can still close. So it is possible that property can be sold. It's just some of the moving parts that we're used to in real estate are not able to happen. A lot of the property that is being sold sight unseen, is being sold without being accessed, without being inspected. There's a lot of cash purchasing in the game. As far as whether appraisals count, it is hard to tell whether they count as essential as a financial service or if they are individually being the appraisal companies or lenders are deciding that they will not send them out to appraise. I'm not a lender. I don't have any direct expertise to say which one is correct or not, but I have heard of both scenarios where properties have been appraising and properties have been not appraising. So it seems to not, there doesn't seem to be a consensus about that as of yet. There are some moving parts relative to the lenders, which I'll get into in a minute, but the point is that things are still alive. There has been deal fallout, which means deals that are on track to close do not. And I don't have a specific percentage that makes sense to our local market because most of my numbers have been from either Keller Williams, which is their entire system, their internal systems, which have been higher numbers, but that doesn't necessarily mean just us. But I mean, they're sizable numbers. I personally have delisted about $1.5 million worth of property over the last 4 or 5 days. But I've also listed about $500,000. So it's kind of weird that it's working in both directions. You might ask, well, why would somebody list right now? And there's a lot of reasons why. One, because of that fallout, there's a reduction right now in the competition that people are seeing. So there's less deals to fight for, or there's less properties to fight over, and buyers still need to move. We think about real estate in the sense that, hey, this is the buying and selling of houses. Like there's not an urgency to it, but for many people there is an urgency. For example, if somebody's already closed on their house with bad timing, and now they're in their occupancy window and they have to go someplace. They have to move. They have to find a place, or they're homeless and living in a hotel. That's a reality. So for them, it's an emergency. They have to close. Real estate investors are still closing. There's a lot of investors who are flush with cash, and at the moment, cash is king. So it gives them a lot of leeway to say, hey, I'm ready to buy your house, but I'm only going to offer you this much for it. And if somebody has to sell because they have to leave, it makes sense. You can go right to title, no appraisal, no nothing else. So property is still closing. It's capable of being closed through title. There's some creative scenarios I've been seeing. I saw Keith Stonehouse has a drive-through window installed over at Franklin. So I mean, there is property still changing hands right now. We also have the stimulus situation, which I'm not really going to get into right now, only because I don't know. I don't have all the answers with stimulus. I've been looking into it. I have not fully absorbed it yet, so I have no absolutes that I'm willing to use to advise other people yet. But there will be an impact from that. There is included within it, and not just from them, but for individual lenders, forbearance has come up quite a bit. There is rent situations, people not paying rent, and then from there, landlords not paying mortgages. Lenders in general are very nervous right now. Rates have been going all weird. Their requirements are going stringent because they're nervous about repayment. One of the things that people don't understand is that the mortgage companies, they have people to pay too. It's very easy to say, oh, boo-hoo for the poor lenders. That is a very low-level way to see what's happening, the interrelations of all of these various financial components in our economic world. So even if mortgage companies forbear payments from individual mortgage payers, they still have to pay. They still have investors to pay for mortgage-backed securities. They've still got bonds on them. They've still got things that have to be covered. Now, these are capitalized groups from a regular person's perspective. When they hear the numbers that are bantied around, they assume that's an infinite amount of money. But that's not accurate, because they have an equal amount of expense that is of the same size and magnitude. So when you say, all right, well, just don't pay the mortgage companies for a while. Okay, well, that can work for maybe a month, maybe 2, maybe 3, but at a certain point, the moving parts that are underneath all that start to collapse. And when mortgage lenders fall apart, at the low level, getting funding for purchases on things like properties or other loans becomes much more difficult, because lenders don't want to lend anymore. So that's one issue. The second issue is the interrelation of all these financial groups and those impacts globally. If we start having mortgage companies and lenders unwind and collapse, those kind of structures, once collapsed, will be very, very difficult to re-erect. So it's not as simple as just saying, hey, money is just a choice we've all made. It's a shared illusion and we can say no to it anytime we want. Okay, guy. A lot of the realities of what's underneath that will erode in a way that is definitely unpleasant and has ramifications for all of us. So, it's just worth noting that that's part of the game that's being played at a pretty high level here when it comes down to the financing of property. And that all, I guess, tied into the fact why cash is so strong right now. And that also brings me to the idea that some of the investors right now, I've already heard from wholesalers, expect offers to be lower. If you are a seller and you've got property that you're expecting to sell on the wholesale market or to a cash investor, you're not going to be getting the numbers that you were getting even a couple weeks ago. Those numbers have dropped. It will be lower. This also impacts my clients and friends who have fixed up property over the winter under the assumption they were going to sell it at a profit in the spring. And unfortunately, I mean, I don't want to say what's going to happen in the future, but for right now, at least me as an investor and a flipper, I would be very hesitant to expect very high returns. I would go so far as to say that window has closed. And I'm sorry if that is harsh, but I think it's a reality that if you have spent money to fix a property up, in a large amount of money to fix a property up, you have to start making some serious decisions and asking some serious questions. Number one, what your need to sell is. If you have to get out from underneath this property, then make some adjustments to your thought process in thinking that you're going to get top dollar. A lot of times when I go into a house, people will ask me, especially after they've fixed it, they'll say, oh, well, I just spent X amount of dollars on this or X amount of dollars on that. I spent $130,000 doing this to the property. I spent $80,000 doing this. And their assumption in saying that is that, well, now that I've spent $50,000 on this thing, on this element of my house is now worth $50,000 more. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. That's not accurate. The analogy I use sometimes when people will say, I put this much into it, I could say, well, I could buy a house and put a golden horseshoe pit in the backyard. It doesn't mean my house is worth $100,000 more. That's not how it works. Houses are worth what the houses around them are worth. It's a comparable scenario that appraisers, that's the premise of appraising property. They will look at what the houses surrounding you are worth, and that is where your property's ceilings are. So what this would look like is if you refinished a basement or did an addition or redid everything in the house, all new fixtures, and your assumption is that, well, now my house is worth $325,000 when every other house in the neighborhood is worth $300,000, and you have to sell that house, put your house in the market for $290,000. That's basically the brutal reality of what I'm saying here. If the window is closed, not closing. There is some speculation that on the other side of this, there could be a boom as demand gets pent up and people need to jump. That's true. That might happen. I'm not saying it won't. I'm doubtful that it will because the economic ramifications are likely stronger than that. But if it did happen, you still have the appraisal situation to deal with and the fact that nothing's really been selling, so there's no comps to go off of except old winter properties that sold at lower numbers. In general, if you have needs, absolute needs to sell, I would expect to get less, and I would start to do the math on what that means for you in your situation. How low can you go? Because the other situation, if it's not a boom on the flip side of this, is that the economic fallout from this scenario can be large, so large, and lenders could be fewer and further between. And what that could mean is that now there is a starker value collapse, and now instead of that 290, you're getting 2. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying these are all potentials, and the likelihood that it's going to go lower is more likely than the fact that it's just going to take a minor blip and then jump back up into space. Sorry, it's just the way that I'm seeing things on the ground. We were already overdue. Our market had been very strong for a long period of time, so we were already overdue for corrections anyway. So it's not like this is, something that was unexpected. This nature of what has happened was unexpected by many, but the idea that the market was going to have changes coming was there. And I think it's really unfortunate for a lot of people who are hoping to beat it and slide in before that window. But unfortunately, I think that time is complete, and I don't think that you've slid in under that window. So I think there is some questions to be preemptively asked. Also, I mentioned this prior, but the COVID addendums are showing up in purchases that are happening. Lenders being spooked are definitely bracing for more fallout, more unemployment. So a lot of these COVID addendums are indicating that if you've got a job now, they're going to keep watching you the entire way through to make sure that you are going to be, your ability to repay will be high at the end of the whole thing after they've funded it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I know this probably wasn't an awesome update to sit and listen to, and it's 14 minutes, which is like 37 years on the internet. My bad. But it is what it is. I hope you guys are all doing good with your families, bunkered down. I am outside in the freezing by the lake, watching it eat into my property because, yeah, there's 6 of us and we're used to having a little more space, but it's still a good time. everybody's got their own individual screens, and I managed to explore a lot of market opportunities I never got to look at before because I was out running around. And luckily, since I can't go out to restaurants and bars, my credit card bill is like fractional compared to what it's usually. So I mean, that's something, right? Anyway, guys, I'll check in with some more interesting stuff as it rolls on. And not everything I post will be about real estate, but I figured it was time for an update since it's been a minute. But I'll keep talking at you, and hopefully we'll get through all this without too many bumps and bruises. So take care.